Without commitment, you'll never start. But more importantly, without consistency, you'll never finish. In the words of the great Denzel Washington, let's get started today with that mindset. Go into this PMP exam with full confidence, full ambition. Don't let anything stop you. Don't let anything get in the way. You got this. And the best way to get rolling is really just understanding what does the exam consist of, right? And getting familiar with it, reducing the fear out of the whole thing. So here's some of the key information you need to be aware of. First, the exam is comprised of 180 questions. 175 of them are the ones that are actually being scored. In total, you have 230 minutes. But during the exam, you've got also 10-minute breaks during the exam. And I highly recommend you take advantage of those breaks. Even, you might be in the moment, you might be wanting to just, move on and get done with the exam. I'm telling you, you're not getting extra time by skipping the break. You really need to take that time and take a breath and think about what's going on during the, just resetting yourself, right? Take the breaks, super important. So to recap, after every 60 questions, you're going to have an option to take a break. And again, just remember here, though, you have a time limit. So when you're practicing, when you're starting to study for this exam, make sure you're to time yourself because you want to make sure you're not running out of time during the exam. So that's something to really keep in mind, that you've got 180 questions in 230 minutes. Make sure you time yourself. And of course, during the day of the exam, it's stressful. You want to pass the exam, but you want to do anything you can to reduce your anxiety. So also knowing that if you don't pass the exam on your first attempt, you're still able to retake. So just go into it with a lot of confidence, but also know that if you don't, for whatever reason, have your best day, it's not the end of the world and you could still pass the exam. So with all that now, let's go into what's going to be in the content, right? Let's actually talk about that now. So I'm going to jump into here and we'll show you the outline here. So it's broken out into 3 different domains: people, process, and business environment. Process is the biggest percentage of the exam. So let me share my opinion on this in terms of how you want to prepare and focus your time. To me, a lot of the people domain can be derived from common sense. So if you've got some experience working on teams or being a manager, you'll know about a lot of the general aspects in dealing with people. But it's 42% of the exam. Still study it. However, you really need to understand the processes. You need to understand the terminology and the big concepts around process. So especially if you're not currently working as a project manager, you're not going to be familiar with all of the terminology and the concepts. So you want to spend a lot of the bulk of your studying under the process. Okay, now here's some important notes here. You look at this in bold, right? Half of the exam is going to represent predictive and traditional project management approaches. But then the other half is actually going to be agile and hybrid approaches. So any background in Scrum methodology, if you got your certified Scrum Master certification, those are going to be extremely helpful for your PMP. So that's super important to look at. That's the new trend, right, in agile, and that the exam is now reflecting that as well. Okay, so now in this exam outline, right, you can see the different aspects. So we talked about this a little bit before, right? People, managing conflict, leading a team, team performance. There is important items in here, so you want to make sure you go through it. However, if we keep scrolling down, where I really think I needed to personally spend a lot of my time was in the processes. The terminology, the frameworks that you need to follow. So all of that is under process, and I want to show you just so you could see, how do I get started, right? For me, I had to just start whiteboarding right here in the back. So I can, right, so here's my study guide. Excuse the handwriting, but this is how it looked like, right? For me, I just needed to organize myself a bit. So for what I did is I jotted down the knowledge areas on the left, like integration management, project scope management, schedule management. And then I grouped it by the different phases of the project. So initiation, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, right? And closing. And then within that, right, what are the key things, right? So scope management, make sure you're planning scope management, collecting requirements, creating the WBS. Schedule management has a lot of important aspects as well. So you want to learn all of those details, right? But at a high level, that's how I organize things, and areas I didn't understand, I focused a little more on. And then at the bottom, there are a few formulas. Now, this isn't a math heavy exam. Do not panic. However, there's a couple important formulas that you want to be aware of. A few of these questions will get thrown at you, so you don't want to ignore it. However, it's not a huge part of the exam, but be ready for it. Those are easy wins if you can just solve it. So here's a couple formulas here as well to have ready and do some practice problems to be ready for. Now, my number one advice for you and how I personally can do best on exams is doing practice exams. So what I did is I worked through multiple full-length practice exams, and this is a resource that was actually provided by my company. So I didn't even need to buy this book. This was provided to me. So always check if you're currently employed. Check your corporate resources. You might have a whole library available to you. So for me, I had this available. It had full-length practice exams. And it's just super important to see where you're weak at, where you're strong at, and then you're able to go back into the study materials and focus that way. And it's just the best way to learn, especially with here when they've got, the questions and then answers right below, so you've got the explanations. And then a couple times I time myself as well to make sure I'm staying within the lane. All right. With that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Again, just get started. And as Denzel said, without commitment, you'll never start. But more importantly, without consistency, you'll never finish. Just get started, open up the books, work through questions day by day. You'll get it, and you'll earn your PMP certification. That's it for today. We'll see you on the next one.